One. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different book review for you guys because I am still working on Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, but I will be doing that one next Wednesday. But I figured that it would be nice to maybe break away and do a little bit something different with this segment, and I wanted to do a little bit of reflecting, and in doing so I wanted to talk a little bit about my favorite sort of book series or sort of collection of books that kind of have some form of consistency or form of a connection to one another in some way, shape, or form. And as I go through these various different series, I'll kind of explain as to why I think it sort of resembles a little bit of a sort of series or a kind of collection. So without further ado, let me start. Oh, and this is probably going to be difficult because I have literally all the books spread out on my bed. But I guess I will start with something that is fairly familiar to tons of people. Whether you like these books or dislike these books, I think it's fairly understandable that they've made a major impact, whether you like them or dislike them. And yes, it is the Harry Potter series. And I grew up with the Harry Potter series at a fairly young age. I always found the Harry Potter series to be enjoyable, in particular with all of the ones. My grandfather's actually borrowing the first one, although he hasn't given it to me back. But I do have the second one here. And the third one here, the where are you fourth one. Somebody may be reading the fourth one too. This is the fifth one, the Goblet of Fire. Or wait, no, the Goblet of Fire I think it is the fourth, and then the fifth is Order of the Phoenix, and then Half-Blood Prince, all here. And then we have the Deathly Hallows, which is here. Now, there may be some people that have had certain issues with this series, and I think those issues can be understandable. But from my viewpoint, I personally find them enjoyable. Do they have problems? I think they can have problems at times. But I think the world that J.K. Rowling creates through all these books, I think they've all had some sort of unique impact with every single one of them, even though we're technically focusing on the same thing here, which is Harry Potter. And you'll kind of see how Harry Potter is basically the sort of like main figure, because it's always Harry Potter and something. That's really how all the titles really start out, and it sort of displays itself as a quasi-fantasy and somewhat, I guess you could say, adventure / mystery series. This series really focuses on certain different tales that really involve Harry Potter. I mean, we do see how all these tales kind of lead up to an ultimate battle, which you will see in the last book. But I think for the most part, this series has a special place, I think, for me, because I find it to be fairly enjoyable, and I like a lot of the characters. I actually don't like Harry as much. I don't think he's that interesting of a character, but I don't think he's really intended to be. I think we're just supposed to kind of look at him as like we are him, and we're kind of going through this sort of world as maybe being this character, rather than focusing on making this character somehow separate and unique. I think that's maybe what J.K. Rowling was going for, although there's probably tons of theory as to what she was trying to establish. But I think for the most part, this series, I think, has allowed itself to really grow. And in particular, what I really like about this series is just how each story has sort of its interesting points, although some people I think are going to have a favorite book within the series, I think that may be how some people feel, and feel that some books maybe stand out more than others, and I think that's fairly understandable. But for me, I found them to be all enjoyable within my childhood. This is really like a childhood, nostalgic kind of a series for me. I really want my kids to read them. If they are interested, I would really like to maybe even read to them if they were little, just read them these stories, because I think they overall do a good job in trying to sort of give us this kind of a world, and within it try to have these characters and have these characters kind of go through these particular journeys, and it's kind of nice to see it all wrap itself up in the last book, that being Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And what I like is that J.K. Rowling didn't drag out the series so long. When I was reading them a little bit a while back, and I thought, okay, when is she really gonna end this? Like, when is this gonna be over? And then you hear, oh, okay, it's going to be the end here in the 7th book. I think that just works, because I think it shows that shows that this author is willing to sort of take this series seriously and try to establish some form of a closure. And I really like when series is just kind of close. I don't like it when they go on, maybe even past 10. Sometimes that's a little frustrating for me, but it just kind of depends. I really like it when they can just try to close something, or just kind of wrap it up in some way, shape, or form. But overall, this series I think is fairly impacting, and I think it's doing itself a service by having and allowing kids to read, and I think this is sort of the series where people started reading again, at least from my childhood. And I understand, though, if people may not necessarily particularly care for this series for whatever reasons, but I found myself being enjoyed sort of in the world. I liked sort of the author's ideas. My grandmother actually reads the series, and she was the first one that introduced me to the series, and I thought this is funny because she lives in a different country, but she was able to get these in English, and these are like the European type-esque versions. These are more of the American versions where you see like kind of the hardcover. So yeah, I mean, overall I think the Harry Potter series is one of those series that resonates with me a lot. Just through the characters, the world, and sort of the struggles and obstacles that the characters find themselves in. I always get interested, and I always want to know what each title sort of means. Like, when I look at Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, I go, okay, what's the Half-Blood Prince? You know, I get curious. Or Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, I go, what's that? And I think it really works as children's books, for like older children's books, not necessarily like 5-year-olds, because I don't think 5-year-olds would be able to understand Harry Potter, but probably 10 or older people could read these and sort of really understand them, or have somebody read it to them. But for the most part, I really found myself liking this series, and I could not recommend it. Now, I guess I will move on to the next series. Maybe a series that has had a little bit more of a nostalgic feel for me, in particular, I guess, in middle school, and this is the sort of Daughter of the Moons series. This series is fairly interesting because in each series, or within each book, they focus on one of the characters who, and again, these books are about girls who sort of have superpowers. and these powers are like from these they're kind of like these very ancient type-ish powers, and all these powers have these sort of effects on them, and they sort of learn how to deal with their powers, and also these kinds of maybe obstacles or maybe villains that they come across, and it's kind of like a sort of girl group kind of series, and I think it sort of resembles a little bit of my earlier childhood in being, I think you probably, from what the scenarios of what I'm explaining here, I think this was a little bit more familiar during a time when I was growing up, where they did have like these kinds of groups that were together, and then they had like these different unique things, and then somehow those unique things end up sort of binding them together or make them interesting. And I really found myself enjoying this series for what it was. It's fairly simple in its writing. This writing isn't really necessarily as maybe profound as something from J.K. Rowling, but nonetheless, I still found myself really enjoying it. And the different girls included Vanessa, Caddy, Serena, and Jamina. And basically, each one has sort of its own book, and then it kind of goes back. You'll see the Goddess of the Night, the first one, is actually about Vanessa, but the other characters come into play. But it does focus more on Vanessa, and you'll kind of see how it does that through the first book. And then in the second book, Into the Cold Fire, it talks about Serena. And then in the third, Nightshade, it talks about Jamina and sort of her powers. And then it talks about Caddy in the... Hi.
You have to get up tomorrow.
Oh, I need to get up, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to go through all of these books. Organizing them all. And then I want to go to bed. But it's hot, and it's 8 o'clock, yeah, that I need to be up. Yeah, I'll go to bed. Yeah, I'll go for the haircut, and then I'm going to go to the $5 bookstore to look for. Okay, and yeah, the Secret Scroll focuses on Caddy, and then this is on the 7th, or no. I need to go to the 5th. The 5th focuses on Stanton, which is a dude, and I think it's funny how he's like, I think he's like the only dude that's the one that's focused on in the girls series, which I found to be interesting. But it talks about his character and how he comes into play with all the other ones that I've previously mentioned. And then we have The Lost One, which focuses on, I guess, another girl, Tiana. And you'll see kind of how her character comes into play. And Moon Demon focuses on Vanessa again. Yeah, this is where we'll get the same thing where they focus on Vanessa again. And then 8 again focuses on Serena. And number 9, The Choice, focuses on Jamina. And then you'll see how the Talesman actually ends up focusing on someone else named Maggie. And I think Maggie is sort of like the mentor figure for them. And we'll see how in the Prophecy, Caddy is now the one that is focused on. And in the last one, you will see The Becoming is focused on Tiana. And this is how basically the series sort of ends itself, for the most part, from what I can tell. I believe there is a guy series now that they're focusing on. However, I haven't been able to really find these books. These books aren't really well known. I don't think a lot of people really recognize these books. I don't think a lot of people talk about these books. But I find them to be fairly interesting in how they structure them and how all of these different characters kind of resemble something and have different problems, and you'll kind of see how they all connect with one another and how they all interact throughout each book. And it's really interesting to see these characters and to see the powers that they have and the sort of things that they deal with. So that's, I think, another series that I found myself really enjoying as I was younger. Another series that I happen to thoroughly enjoy is the Princess Diaries series. I believe a lot of people have heard of the Princess Diaries series. I personally found the series a lot more engaging, a lot more enjoyable than actually the movie. Yeah, I think the Princess Diaries is just way different in the book than it is in the movie. The movie really doesn't really, I think, hold so much value for me compared to the books. And I just really like how Meg Cabot writes, and how she writes a little bit more on the sides of like kind of goofy, and she writes on things that I feel are very relatable, and things that can actually happen within somebody's life, and it's interesting that it's all through sort of Mia's perspective and Mia's voice. And in case you don't know what the Princess Diaries is, it's basically a series where this teenager, Mia Thermopolis, discovers that she is a princess of Genovia, which is like a European country, and it sort of discusses sort of her life and how she deals with her grandmother, who sort of is the queen of Genovia, and how basically she sort of deals with this whole kind of double life and being a normal teenager, but at the same time being this princess. And you kind of see how the series grows, like with volume 2, and it's like Princess in the Spotlight. They have like different names for the ones, Princess in Waiting, and you'll see how within each book she kind of goes through sort of a different struggle or different issues, and how those issues maybe develop through each book as you go through the series. Princess in Pink, Princess in Training. I believe I have one that is not within the order here. I think I lost the third one by mistake. But this is just going on to number 7, Party Princess. And then I believe The Princess on the Brink is the 8th one. And I really don't know. I mean, I've tried finding ones, but I haven't been able to. I'm hoping that maybe if I can go to my bookstore and find one. I know there's going to be, I think there's at least one more within this series that I haven't read yet. But I'm hoping it closes out itself, because, I mean, it's piling up, and I think it's fairly understandable that it would end at some point. And I think it's going to probably end with her going to college, but I still need to read up on it. So this series isn't complete for me, but I find myself really liking the books, and liking sort of this interesting kind of a writing, in that it's focused on Mia, and she basically writes like in her diary. That's why it's sort of called The Princess Diaries, is because she writes everything that's written within each book is like her diary. So I think that's very interesting, and I found myself really liking that series. Now the next two that I wanted to focus on are not necessarily in a series, but they focus sort of on the adventures of the same character. And this particular series sort of starts with being one of the first being Angels and Demons, and this is by Dan Brown. And basically Dan Brown, what he does with his novels is that he focuses on this one character named Robert Langdon, and basically Langdon goes through, like, again, sort of a similar scenario where he has to crack sort of the code and sort of save the day in the process. In case you don't know what Angels and Demons is about, it's basically about Langdon trying to figure out how he can set these captured cardinals free, and you'll sort of see how this plays in. And these are Roman Catholic cardinals. These are cardinals that are elected to, that are on sort of the election ballot to be pope. So because the pope previously dies, the previous pope dies, so he's has to be the one to find the perpetrator and who is holding these cardinals. And you'll sort of see how the journey is just so intense. And what I love about Dan Brown's novels is that I like the intensity that he gives. I really like how I really feel on the edge of my seat. And I think Angels and Demons was probably the best one that I've read out of his. I really found myself enjoying it, as well as the Da Vinci Code, which is also another book, which I guess you could consider a controversial book, but I don't really mind controversial type stuff. I find myself being interested more in controversial stuff, and I personally like Dan Brown for that. So, and also, not only did he make Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code, he also did The Lost Symbol. Now, The Lost Symbol is fairly, I don't think it's as great as maybe something like the Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons, but I still think it's decent enough where I do find myself being invested and sort of enjoying the sort of rush that the book gives me, and I find it interesting to sort of see this character, Robert Langdon, trying to find something. There's not really a lot of growth, I think, to his character for the most part, but I think he's not really designed to be a character that grows. I think he's just designed to have a job and then to do something about that job. But basically, The Lost Symbol focuses on, and this is the latest one, and it focuses on our American government and how he has to use these secret sort of passageways and in order to find out where sort of this lost symbol is. And you'll kind of see how everything within the plot sort of intertwines itself with this whole idea of all the things that deal with sort of our like capital and all of these sort of meanings behind like the monuments and such. So I find that interesting, and I thought it was, for the most part, well executed. And although Dan Brown's novels can sometimes be, I think, a little brutal at times and a little gruesome, I think they're done to sort of give you a sense of intensity, and I think it's done for the most part fairly effectively. And in case anybody doesn't know what the Da Vinci Code is, that basically focuses on sort of the Holy Grail, and you'll see how the Holy Grail is something completely different from maybe things that you've seen like in the Last Crusade, the Indiana Jones movie. So, and again, it's just about him trying to find all the pieces together and try to get as many people out of a particular situation that could involve possible death. That's really what Robert Langdon's job is, and it's just nice to see this kind of character going through these kinds of different things and having himself be challenged at times, and I think that allows for a little bit more of a character to him, in that he is challenged at times and sometimes he is wrong, and that sometimes these things end up leading him to maybe dead ends or something. And but I think these books are designed in a way where I feel like I'm getting a lot of depth, but at the same time I'm getting a lot of fast-paced movement, because these books move at a fairly fast pace and you do want to read it, you do want to keep going on, and that's why I really, really like these 3 books that he's come up with that sort of tie in with this Robert Langdon character. So that's why I classify it sort of as like a series, even though it's not technically a series. It's not giving like book 1, 2, 3, but it is giving you a sense of sort of a collection that is sort of resembles and focuses on the same character and sort of the same kind of story, similar in the way with the Harry Potter series, as well as the Daughters of the Moon series, as well as the Princess Diaries series. And I think that's really what series have in common. They have, all these particular books have a fairly close-knit attachment to plot and to characters, and that's why I classify it sort of as a collection. Now, the other books that I wanted to briefly discuss include the Lord of the Rings series as well, beginning with The Hobbit, and I did lose the first one in the Lord of the Rings series, The Fellowship. I have no idea where it went, but I have The Two Towers here and The Return of the King here, and it has been a while since I've read these. I think I should kind of go back and read them. The Hobbit I read more recently, so I kind of know a little bit more of what's going on there, but I think I need to read Lord of the Rings series again and kind of see what they did differently in the movies. But I really like how I just really like the world that J.R. Tolkien creates. And I've also read other things that have sort of been related to this kind of a series. One being The Children of Hurin, which is also, I think, a well-done Tolkien book. So they're all within this kind of Tolkien-esque realm. So they kind of focus on different things, I think, at times, but within sort of the same kind of story, because you'll notice that The Children of Hurin is like way earlier, before The Hobbit or any of this stuff happens. So you'll kind of see how Sauron, who's sort of supposed to be the antagonist, comes into sort of the picture in this particular book, and which allows for these other books to come into existence, sort of. Even though this was, I believe, written a little bit later on, because this is actually edited by Christopher Tolkien, who I believe is the son of J.R.R. Tolkien. So, but for the most part, they do focus on this kind of same world, and I really like how Tolkien has created this world. I think this world is just really well done, and it's done with a lot of detail and a lot of passion, and I think this really was his world. It was his way of escaping reality, and I think he did establish something, I think, really well executed. And even though some parts of the certain novels maybe can drag at times, I still think that they kind of hold a special place for me as far as fantasy is concerned, because of the world, as well as the characters, and kind of the in-depthness. And basically what this series, as well as what The Children of Hurin and what Tolkien's world focus on, is the whole idea of the One Ring and Middle-earth, and how Middle-earth goes under this change because of the One Ring being created, and also by Sauron, who is sort of the antagonist, and you'll kind of see how he wants to enslave the Earth, or Middle-earth, and later on within these books, and how he uses sort of the One Ring to do that. But in The Children of Hurin, it just focuses sort of on how parts of it focus on how he gets his power, and it focuses on other characters that are not within these books. So even though certain parts of it are a little bit more on the ends of not being so drawn together, they still revolve around this world, and they still revolve around the antagonist, and they still revolve around these similar kinds of circumstances, like with dwarves and elves and men and all these different beings, and it's all within the same context of the world. It's just different stages of this world, and that's really, I think, what Tolkien was trying to establish. He wasn't really trying to establish one particular series. It's just the Lord of the Rings series happens to be a series sort of within this grand scheme of things. And the Children of Hurvan kind of is within the scheme of things. But I think that's really all I can say about that. Another series that I happened to really like when I was a kid was the Nancy Drew series. I found myself kind of enjoying certain books. I have like 1 through 7. The Secret, The Old Clock is like the first one. The Hidden Staircase, second one. The Bungalow Mystery, the third one. The Mystery of Lilac Inn, fourth one. The Secret of Shadow Ranch, fifth one. The Secret of the Red Gate Farm, sixth one, and The Clue in the Diary, the seventh one. What I liked about in particular with the Nancy Drew series was I liked how it was, how it kind of had this sort of pattern with like solving these mysteries. And I think they were just easy for me to understand because they were more designed to be, I think, a little bit more on the childlike realm, and a little bit more designed for kids because they weren't always so long. As you can see, these books are fairly skinny, and they were just quick for me to read, and I found myself really liking sort of the mysteries. I was like a really mystery person when I was a kid. I liked Scooby-Doo and all that stuff, but I kind of do see sort of the flaws with them now, and I don't really find myself enjoying mystery so much anymore. But I did like the Nancy Drew series when I was a kid, and I just haven't read them in a while. But I think they're just kind of part of my childhood and something that I'll just spread to my kids, but I don't think it'll be something necessarily that I'll be identifying with so much again. But I think I can maybe go back a little bit more. But basically they focus on Nancy Drew, and she's basically someone who solves mysteries. And that's really how this series practically starts out as, and there's tons of books. I only have 7, but there's tons of them, so I think that's why I really stopped, was just because, and I think that's really a problem that I had with the Nancy Drew series. It just went on and on and on with all these different books, and I just thought, I'm not going to keep buying these books anymore. I just can't do it. I don't have the money to do it. Another few 3 that I wanted to talk about was The Golden Compass, The Subtile Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. These 3, all in that order: first one, second one, third one. And basically this series sort of focuses on it focuses on Lyra, and it's sort of like this world too. It's like trying to get you into this world of where Lyra lives, and kind of tries to establish things through that perspective, and how suddenly things change for her, and how these certain circumstances sort of send her sort of on a kind of mission. And you'll kind of see how that sort of unfolds within the different novels, and how they sort of are kind of a continuation up to the Amber Spyglass, basically. But what I really liked was sort of the world, and I liked how the characters sort of grow, and I thought it was a lot better constructed than, I think, the movie. There was a movie that they made called The Golden Compass, but I could just tell from like how they set up everything that it wasn't really the same as the books. So I really find myself enjoying the series because of the world, and how Lyra sort of goes through this world and the characters she comes across, and how they try to sort of find a way to overcome the obstacles that they're under, and you'll kind of see how things sort of reveal themselves and not everything is so clear cut. And so I think the series is fairly good in that it tries to just be a trilogy and kind of stay there. So yes, definitely worth considering. The second to last ones that I wanted to talk about was the a series of unfortunate events series. I find myself really enjoying this series. All of the books, every single one of them I have, and I really like the sort of nice covers that they have, and how they have like pictures on them. I'm showing them to you all in order, and I find it interesting too how they have like the bad beginning. You know, they have like 2 B's in one, and then they have the reptile room, which is 2 R's, and then the wide window, which is 2 W's, and then the miserable mill has the 4th one with 2 M's, the austere academy, the ersatz elevator, the vile village, the penultimate peril, the hostile hospital, the carnivorous carnival, the slippery slope, the grim grotto, and then this last one, which does not have a double H's or double S's, but just the end. And the thing is I don't really know if this is the end. I could be wrong, because sort of Lemony Snicket just, and again, Lemony Snicket's the author of this book, this series of books, and in particular what I like about his writing is just this, like, he writes like no other person I've seen like write before. He has this way with words, and he sort of uses these words in a fairly relatable way, and it's nice to kind of see these characters grow. And the 3 characters that I'm in particular talking about are Sunny, Klaus, and Violet, and basically these 3 kids are orphans, and you'll see how Count Olaf, and he comes into play in the first novel. You'll see there's a picture of him there, and there's also been a movie about this, although I don't think the movie is that great. I think the series is a lot better, and they just kind of stopped making movies about the series. But basically, the book focuses on them and how they lose their parents, and Count Olaf is sort of out there to destroy them and destroy their sort of chances, I guess, of really a happy life, because he really is after their finances in particular, because their parents, the Baudelaires, were really well off. They were fairly rich, so he's kind of after their inheritance. And you'll kind of sort of see how these characters kind of go through these different houses, and the first house that they go through is actually Count Olaf's house, and then they sort of go from there into different areas and different places, and they have these different adventures, and then they have to be tested by their wits and sort of their different traits and personality that get them from one place to the next. And I really like this series into how sort of clever it is, but it also maintains the fact that it is sort of childlike, in that the books aren't really that long, although they do get bigger over time eventually, but they don't really reach so massive, but they do feel more childlike into how they sort of show these pictures, and how they how the characters go through these different things, because again, these characters are more childlike, although they do although some of them are older than others, Violet being the oldest, Klaus being the middle kid and then Sunny being sort of like the baby. But you'll see how they all three of them go through these different things and different owners, and because they're orphans, and you'll kind of see how they grow and how they kind of try to help each other out. And yeah, I mean, I think that's really the whole point of these books, is that they're just trying to get you into these characters and try to give you sort of a adventure with them. And again, this is how it kind of establishes itself as a series, sort of. And towards the end, even the answers aren't really necessarily clear cut, so to speak, at the end. And I kind of want Lemony Snicket to kind of, I don't know, I personally feel like there's still some things that really are in the mystery, but again, he might have wanted them to be that way, I'm not sure. But for the most part, I like how he writes and how unique it is, and how he tries to make the whole series in itself fairly unique with each book. And I think there was a lot of passion and heart with all of these books that he made. So I think that's really all I can say about that. Now the last ones, and excuse me, I need to get up to show you, deal with different girls in particular. And these are ones that I grew up with in my childhood. And then I'll be done. I will have gone through everything. But basically, these were ones that I grew up with when I was a kid. They were fairly easy books, but I really found myself enjoying them. And these are girls that are basically from America, and they live in different time periods, and they talk about all these like adventures that they have, and they're very childlike books, but I think I really found myself enjoying them as a kid. And they just focus sort of on their lives and the struggles of that time period. Like Molly Saves the Day, and the Molly series, like Happy Birthday Molly, and Molly's Surprise, and Molly Learns a Lesson, and Meet Molly, sort of focus in on Molly, and I just put all of those in backwards order, so Meet Molly is the first one. So as you'll see through her time period, she is in, I believe it was World War II time period. At least that's where it starts out. And I think it was her father who was actually serving during the war, and you'll sort of see how she just goes throughout these adventures while she's at her home and while her dad is fighting off in the war, and you'll kind of see how she just goes through these different stages within her life. And it's really it was really interesting as a kid for me, because I liked sort of this history type of stuff, so I found myself really enjoying that. Now another series, and these are all series within series, so the American Girls is like a series, but this one focuses on 1934, and this focuses on Kit, and the first one being Meet Kit, and then Kit's Surprise, and again it's kind of the same thing where they have the same title, Kit Saves the Day, and then changes for Kit. So it's somewhat similar to sort of the Molly series, but it focuses on a girl that lives in like the 1930s, 1934, and basically since this is 1934, this is during the Great Depression, and it focuses on, again, her life and in the Great Depression. So you'll kind of see how she gets by, and how she learns these different things throughout the entire sort of series and collection of the books. And that's really sort of her story. And this second series that I wanted to discuss briefly, I believe this is all Samantha, yes. This is all changes for Samantha. Samantha Saves the Day, like Happy Birthday. Yeah, it's sort of the same title, but with the girl's name. And basically, she lives in 1904, and it sort of has this sort of deals with this sort of time period in American history, and sort of addresses the things that were going on, as well as what her sort of life was like in this time period. So I found these to be fairly interesting. And also the Changes in Felicity series, which do focus on sort of the lead up to the early founding of America in 1774, and basically it kind of deals with how she deals with all these different sort of issues that were within that time period. So again, this series in particular is fairly straightforward from what I'm giving you, but the last one that I wanted to briefly address, and the ones that I have, is the series of Josephina, and it basically goes through her life in sort of the Old West, New Mexico, and kind of deals with all these different things that were going on within that time period as well in American history. So really, from what I've suggested and what I've said, this is really all of the series that I've grown up with, the series that I've found myself really enjoying, and these series that I would definitely recommend if you haven't heard of any of them. But I think that's really all I can say about them. They're I think very profound in their own special way, and I definitely would recommend, if you could find them somehow, to find them. I think some of them are more designed for kids. Again, some of these books I've had since I was a wee little child, but some of them I think are a little bit more adult, and probably Harry Potter and Dan Brown, and maybe the Lord of the Rings series as well, can, I think, be classified as maybe more adult, and then maybe the series of Unfortunate Events as well. Even though some of these are designed a little bit more for kids, they are smart, I think, in their own special way. But I think that's really all I can say about them. They all have their sort of unique place for me, and I really enjoy them, and I definitely would recommend them to people if you have not heard of the series. But I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns? More than happy to answer them, and until next time.